Hello, friends. So I am sitting here today with my client Gisela, and we are working on a piece of her writing. So I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of a behind the scenes of how we go from rough draft to more polished draft that feels like you, that sounds like you. So Gisela, why don't you let people know what exactly we are working on and how you feel about the piece right now?
Great. So right now I am working on a group called Millennials, and it reaches out to all moms who are, of course, millennials and who need to come together in a community, in a space where we feel safe and we can just talk about pretty much anything. And I'm guiding them through my experience as a mom. And yeah, so the work that I'm trying to do with Paloma with my writing is to really get to know my voice better as a writer. So I pretty much write from my heart, and then I know it does need some polishing, and I need it to be, more interactive, and just to keep learning from someone that about the things that I don't exactly know. So that's pretty much what we're doing.
Okay, great. So why don't you introduce this particular piece? What are we working on today?
So it's a piece on vulnerability, right? And I call it becoming a butterfly. And it's basically a metaphor for, what it is to feel through the changes of motherhood, and recognizing those changes and creating what is our cocoon, right? When we become a mother, we're broken because of the amount of love, the amount of emotions that go through us as women, and to recognize that and to find the woman within that mom is it's a long process. So for me, it's about finding the cocoon, the support, the nurturing, to be able to go from a caterpillar and evolve and transform from within, and get become a butterfly. And that's the process that I'm in, and that's what my piece is about: is
Right.
self-acceptance, self-love, and sexy mamahood.
Great. Awesome. And so is this will be either to post on your blog or on your group or potentially both?
Potentially both. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Okay. Okay, great. So we are going to shift to screen share. Let's see how we do this. And we are going to open up the piece. So hopefully that you can see that. So this is the rough draft. Okay. So we're going to go through it. Gisela has read it to me. I don't think that it's necessary for us to read it to whoever's listening. You're going to see the pieces. It's essentially going through the metaphor of saying being a mom is like going exactly like Giselle explained. Actually, you said it better than I would say it. So, okay, first tip. First tip I'm going to offer is it is really important that you start strong because your first sentence is where they decide, am I going to read this or am I not going to read this, right? So, do you want to read them what your first sentence is?
Sure. So I wrote, some people look at vulnerability and think it is a weakness. Think it is a weakness, something that we must not dwell on or ignore as much as possible. I was doing that not too long ago, and all that was leading me was into a self-loathing pity party.
Okay, great. How many words do you think that is?
A lot.
A lot. Okay. So if we can get our first sentence to be no more than 7 or 8 words, and that first sentence makes you ask questions, right? Like, for example, and really take us into a vivid moment. And when I say a vivid moment, I mean a moment that you can feel. So something like, I was sitting on the kitchen floor with my screaming baby, period, right? Take us to that very vivid moment. Um, and then we have all these questions that we want answered. So Gisela is just making notes right now for herself as she's writing. So I'm going to actually say there was a sentence that I found particularly compelling where you said, because I just want that first sentence to be like bang. That first sentence. What is there a sentence that stuck out to you? There was one I just remember when you were reading it hit me. Actually, it's just the page. Would it be possible to really quickly read it just so people know? And then I'll refresh our memory.
Sure. So I wrote, hey, sexy mamacita.
So we got our first sentence. You read that, and then
And then I go on to vulnerability is the cocoon stage of the caterpillar before it turns into a butterfly. In this vulnerable stage, we must make sure that we have a strong cocoon that will protect us and nurture us enough while we are going through some major transformation within. No one can see what is happening, but the changes from within that cocoon is magical.
Actually, no, we'll do piece by piece. We'll do piece by piece, okay? So it's sort of like this. You know what you're writing about, but your reader doesn't. So it's sort of like when it is like an explaining challenge, right? So when I'm explaining to you, like we were talking about funnels, right? I wouldn't start off by saying it's really important that your lead magnet brings your prospects through your funnels because ultimately the goal of a funnel is so that your prospects buy your higher end packages. And the way that you do that is by taking them through this nurturing and cultivation process. You will say, sorry, what the hell? Right? Like, I can't give you everything so fast, right? Sort of want to make you earn it with little bite-sized pieces, right? So if you start off with like literally, you get max 7 words. So if you start off with like something kind of controversial, like motherhood sucks, period. Well, it doesn't suck, but some theorists have compared it to forms of torture used on prisoners, period. Next sentence. My baby was 3 months old, screaming in the kitchen, and I wanted to run away, period. Next sentence. Thank God my husband came home and took her from my hands because I was about to have a breakdown. Next sentence, right? So it's like not only are you taking us to a very vivid moment, but you're giving us little pieces at a time. And everybody, like, one mistake that I see is that people start off by telling us the lesson. Like, you have already worked out the details in your mind. You've already worked out, like, this all comes down to you have to be able to make yourself vulnerable or whatever the lesson is, right? But the reader's not at that point yet. The reader doesn't know what the hell we're even talking about yet. So you need to start off with something dramatic and interesting enough that they're going to stay with you on that journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, so as we're going, the first 2 sentences, we have some interesting points. The only challenge is, 1, the sentences are too long, and 2, we're not really earning that attention. And by the way, long sentences can go later. Once we've earned their loyalty because they're interested in our topic, then we are granted the right to use longer sentences. But early on, short and choppy. And by the way, like, attention is so fractured these days that a short, choppy sentence works best most of the time. If most of your sentences are short and choppy, it helps you get through it. Like, the longer the sentence is, the more resistance. It's like at a certain point, it's like running through Jello. So you want to read it because it matters to you. I want to read it because I care about you and I want you to do well. But a random stranger has no reason to be charitable. They're completely self-interested. And so the only way to play to that self-interest is to short, snappy, controversial, interesting, worth reading. So with that in mind, let's read the next sentence.
My cocoon has not always been nurtured right. It is our duty to ourselves to make sure that when we are most vulnerable, we make that cocoon the most nurturing and protective that we can, so that within it, we can change and evolve into beautiful butterflies.
Okay, great. So one good thing that you're doing is using an analogy or a metaphor, because that's a wonderful way to explain. It's like so much easier than talking about a very abstract concept. Like, let me tell you about justice. What does justice mean? Okay, well, if I can see somebody like holding on to metal bars in a jail cell, at least that is a visual thing that connects with me. So it's good that you're using an analogy. What I would say is, and I think it's a useful analogy. The only thing is, it can come off as sort of familiar. You know what I mean? Like, when we've heard something, a lot of times it can feel kind of cliche. And so what we have to do, if we're going to use a cliche, you can use a cliche, but play with it, right? Here's a bad example of that. You know the think outside the box? Is the most annoying, for me, I find it the most annoying cliche. Like, stop saying you're original when you're like using the least original phrase possible, right? And then they're like, then Taco Bell's like, think outside the taco. And you're like, wah, wah, like, please don't. But if you want to remake or refashion that cliche and use it in a funny, interesting, absurd way, that's a great thing to do because you're playing off what we already know. So you can say, being a mom is like being a butterfly, except with more vomit in your hair, tears in your eyes, and less money in your pocket. Or like, I don't know, right? Like you can play off that cliche, but to use that cliche 100% sincerely is sort of unless you're giving something new or fresh, people don't have a reason to pay attention unless it's really new or fresh. And for us, we might think, oh, this feels new because it's the first time we've articulated it in that way. But the test is, does it feel familiar? If it feels familiar, then it is better off to pick something fresher or weirder or stranger, right? Like the first thing that pops into your mind is usually the cliche. And then the third or fourth that you like really make yourself think, or like, what else is motherhood like? I think it's kind of cool. Like, weren't you telling me, Gisela, when we were working on building your group, that the amount of sleep deprivation that a woman goes through as a mother is similar to the types of torture they use to get information out of people? Didn't you say? For me, that's fascinating, right? So if you were to build an analogy that way, or whatever you do, but then Gisela does do this in this paragraph here. Can you read this out loud?
In the process of going through all of this myself, there was a point where I needed to decide if I was going to own this bitch or it was going to own me. I want to become a butterfly. I deserve those fucking wings.
Great. So you did exactly what you're supposed to do, right? Or it's like, that's interesting to me. It's not as interesting, and I just say this with like the tough love because I think you're amazing. It's not as interesting to me to say something like we need to burst out of our shells, whatever, because that is very familiar. I do like the idea of like, you know, we always use this metaphor that a cocoon is something that we're supposed to burst out of. Well, go against something we're familiar with. How about if we need that cocoon? How about if we need a little bit of safety and protection? How about if we're not ready to be vulnerable, right? So if you are going to recast or replay um, or change a cliche, then absolutely it's welcome. If we're gonna say something like home is where the heart is, then it may as well be on a mug, you know. And God forbid, like the things that we write could be like on a T-shirt or a mug, something like that. Why don't we? And I like that, and like I like that mix of like interesting language, strong, like blunt language. She says, becoming a butterfly is a hell of a hard job. You can't do it alone. You need to be in that cocoon, being nurtured and protected long enough for that transformation to happen. I like that. So you can go back, you did the job of the creator. Then the creator walks out of the room, and suddenly Gisela, the creator's out, and Gisela, the editor, and Paloma, the editor, in, because the creator is the writer is the creator, the editor is the destroyer. So how can the creator and the destroyer do their work at the same time? They can't, right? So the creator did the work. We said, thank you very much, creator, goodbye. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to be sharks. Actually, speaking of motherhood, I had a poetry teacher who said to us, when you are writing, you have to be the, what is it called? The midwife, a midwife. Mm-hmm. And when you're editing, you have to be a shark. Mm-hmm. Right? So let's keep going from there. Let's keep going from there. Yeah. Mamas.
Mamas. Becoming a mom is hard shit, but recognizing the woman from within again can be even a harder process. Sexy is not the first thought that came to my mind after my 9-pound baby made its way into the world. I no longer saw the Gisela I used to be. I saw a complete stranger. I would not recognize myself if I was staring right back at me. But at the same time, this didn't matter. What mattered was that I was now a mom, and my baby burrito came first, second, and third.
Okay, that was the sentence where I said, that's an interesting place to begin. Start in the middle. Start where it's interesting, and you can get to that lesson if you want to have that moment. Did you watch Full House?
Yeah.
Okay, when Danny Tanner is like on the couch with Stephanie's like, Stephanie, and there's like slow like piano playing, Stephanie, it's not nice to lie. And she's like, you're right, Dad. And then they like hug. You can have that moment at the end of your piece if you want. You can have that moment where like, Paloma, it's all about vulnerability. But start in a place like this. I think if you start with a sentence like this, start, sexy is not the first thought that came to mind after birthing a 9-pound baby, period. I no longer saw the Gisela I used to be. I saw a complete stranger. Then go concrete. I really I can't emphasize this point enough. The difference between concrete nouns and abstract nouns, right? So an abstraction is something like I didn't recognize myself. That's a more abstract. It's an idea. Mm-hmm. If I said to you, I can't understand ideas, show me an image. What does I don't recognize myself look like? What's the first thing that pops into your head? If I say, show me that in an image. A picture. Great. So the first thing we think is a cliche. I look in the mirror, I don't recognize myself. Okay, we do away with the cliche. What's the next thing that we think of? Maybe I look down at my stomach that used to be flat, that I used to like go on the beach in a bikini and feel so confident, and suddenly what?
It hangs.
Suddenly my stomach hangs and I feel what?
Like I feel like I'm disconnected from who I am.
Okay, good. And that's an abstraction too. Can you keep it concrete?
Okay. And I feel
like, how would you say it to a child? Because a child doesn't understand. I don't recognize who I am. You need an image.
And I feel huge.
Great. Or I feel like this. I've never seen this tummy before. Or so you go from I saw a complete stranger. That's sort of an abstraction to I looked down at my belly that used to be flat. I used to wear crop tops when I went to Israel and I hung out with all these sexy boys and now I had all of these stretch marks that look like a lion scratched me. And then bring us that deep emotion. Bring us that deep emotion of the low, because that low emotion is gonna make it all the sweeter when we get to that high point of self-acceptance, right? They say like don't feed someone before they're hungry. And the food, the nurturing that you're trying to give is sometimes we're vulnerable and we have to care for ourselves, or whatever the lesson is, right? But they're not hungry for that yet. The way to make them hungry is to pound them over the head with the problem. Where it's like, before I say to you, hey, I made this delicious plate of food, maybe you're not hungry yet. What if I say to you, my stomach is growling. Is your stomach growling? Yeah. Oh, it's about 7 p.m. Oh, we haven't eaten yet today, right?
No.
What? Remember, when is the last time we had Italian food? Wasn't it so delicious when we had it? I can remember when we were in Rome and we had those fresh baked pizzas with the oregano and the basil. Wasn't that so delicious? Do you want to go out for dinner tonight? Right. There you go. So instead of starting out with, we should go to an Italian restaurant, you build that hunger before you feed them, right? The same with your writing. Don't give them the lesson easy, because you didn't get that lesson easy, right? You had to earn that lesson. And so you got to make them earn it too. Let them go on the same journey you went on. And then you say, like, I tried this. It didn't work. Everyone just told me, oh, just accept yourself. How the heck do you do that? Only when I went to a nude beach. Only when I was completely naked in front of my masseuse. Only when I saw other women in the change room who had a C-section. Only then did I start to say, hey, my body did something amazing, right? So does that make sense, the difference between like a concrete, tangible, something you can feel, something you can taste, something you can see, versus an abstraction like sadness, right? Yeah. Turn it into something concrete. And then, okay, can you read the last 2 paragraphs for us?
The journey to finding out who Gisela, the mother, the lover, the entrepreneur, is just beginning. I am sharing my journey to sexy mamahood as I go along. One thing I have learned so far is that it takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to grow as a human, and it takes a village to help you up when you're down. Accepting my body as it is something I struggle with every day. But as I slowly become who I want to be, I learn to love it more and more.
I think that's beautiful. And do you see how at the end it's earned? At the end, you've shown us the struggle. Okay, now you can tell us the how should I feel and think about it. But you can't start there because you're like, sorry, wait, what? If I literally go up to you on the street and I'm like, do you want to get Italian food? You're like, who are you? What time is it? What, like, you don't have the context. Um, so these are just some simple tips about like how to make this. It's only a page piece of writing. I think it could be a third of the length because it takes that amount of time to get your ideas out.
Mm-hmm.
But then after that, you cut the fat. I say every word costs $1. So if every word costs $1, you bet your butt you can find a way to cut it in half and make it stronger, right? So you cut anything that feels cliche. You turn abstractions into concrete images. Really make us feel the pain before you offer the solution. Don't feed us until we're hungry. Start with short, choppy sentences. Start with a sentence that makes you say, wait, what? Tell me more. Something dramatic, something intense. And let us feel that pain. Is there anything that you wanted to say before we wrap up? And then we're gonna shut off our recording, guys, and we're gonna go like a deep dive and actually like do the final polish on this. But I just wanted to show you, first reactions to a piece of writing and how you can make it. I mean, your goal is that people read it. Number one, like don't take for granted that they're gonna read it. Not only read it, but their heart connects with it. That you can influence them, that you can persuade them, they can like you, trust you, respect you, and that they too want to give their own perspective on it. So a little bit of controversial, start off by saying motherhood isn't all it's cracked up to be, period. I thought I was going crazy for 3 years, period. What? That's intense. Then you have somewhere to go. But if you start off with vulnerability isn't a weakness, where do we have to go from there, right? So those anecdotes, those little stories about like, let me take you into a moment. Let me zoom in so you can see it like a movie. I'm gonna dramatize it. I'm gonna put the actors right in front of you and act it out so that you can experience it. Because nobody likes to be told. People like to be shown. So show rather than tell. And showing means storytelling. Showing means anecdotes. Showing means concrete nouns so that they can feel it and they can experience it with you, because people want to experience stuff, even ugly stuff. That's why I found like the book A Million Little Pieces about this dude who was an alcoholic fascinating, because he does not let you off the hook and he stabs you in the heart and you feel it with him. So how would you stab people in the heart and then like make them stand up and clap for you at the end, right? What would you say your takeaways are in terms of writing, in terms of how you're going to edit this and going forward?
Well, there's a lot.
Yeah,
definitely. I can definitely see how I can make this more detailed in the way of having more concrete sentences,
right,
and having really like powerful words come together.
Right.
And I really liked how you said create a more vivid moment. Bring them, narrow it in, bring them into that moment with you. And I think that's so important because like you just said, you can't tell people how to feel or how to read something or how to do something, but you can show them how you were feeling, how you were doing something, and that would really capture their attention.
Right.
So I definitely took that away. That was the number one. And about cutting things down, because if you do think of it like it costs you $1, then you'd be definitely thinking
more economical.
Like, more economical. You'd be like, oh, this is going to be really expensive. I can't pay this much.
And also like people's attention. People have about 20 minutes of good attention at once. So, and this is difficult for me. My Facebook posts are really long, and I always have to remind myself. Sometimes I'm not good at it to cut down, because it's almost like you're taking people's attention for granted, right? If they say to you, hey, I want more, then you say, go read my blog. You have a place that you can give them more. But if you're trying to bait them, if you're trying to get them, then give them a little bit less. Give them like 4 sentences that kill them. Like, you know, sentence 1, my mother-in-law found me crying in the bathroom. Sentence 2, I packed my bags because I was ready to run away. Sentence 3, thank God, thank God, I don't know who came into the room. Thank God my daughter wandered into the room and kissed me on the cheek. Thing 4, I'm still struggling, but I remember what it's about in the end, you know? Like, if you can make it short and good, it's better than long and good. And then when it is long, everything is quality because there's nothing that you can sacrifice. Every word contributes, every sentence contributes, everything bangs you in the heart and hurts you and makes you feel joy. And like, reading it should be an emotional experience. That's what makes you want to share it because you're like, wow, that touched me, right? Anyways, guys, thank you for watching this, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you have an awesome day. Bye, guys. Bye.